Hello, this is Roman Gabriel, and you are listening to the Grueling Truth.
Welcome to the Grueling Truth NFL Legends Show, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, an interactive football app where you get to call what you think the offense or defense should do during a live NFL game and see what all other fans have called also. Check out Gridiron Mo at www.gridironmo.com. I'm your host for the Legends Show, Mike Goodpaster. I want to welcome in my co-host, Matt Andruscavage.
Good to be here today, and I'm very excited about our guest. This is a very unique situation today.
Yeah, I mean, we've had guys on before where we said they've done just about everything, but I think this one has.
I think so.
Our guest today was, one of the best defensive linemen in a decade of the 70s, played with the Rams with Merlin Olsen, Jack Youngblood, had a great career, also starred in NBC's hit series Hunter during the 1980s. Help me welcome to the Grueling Truth, Fred Dreyer.
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for being on. We'll just start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about when you started playing football and maybe some of your early influences.
Oh, I think I'm like most guys that followed that path. You're a young kid, and you watch college games, and you go to high school, and you kind of dabble around thinking about maybe I should play. I only played 1 year of high school football. I was primarily a baseball player, and so I played my senior year of high school, and then I sat out of. I didn't go to school. I just kind of hung out and chased my girlfriend around for a while, and then my friends all started going over to El Camino Junior College for spring practice, and I went over there one day to see a couple of them, and next thing I know, I was enrolled in school, trying out for the football team. So I played 2 years there at El Camino College, and then I got a scholarship to San Diego State, and then the Giants drafted me in '69, and then I came back out to the Rams from '72 to '81, and it all went by very fast. It was, I look back on that period of my life, and I guess it's one thing to be young. It's another thing to have your youth so chocked full of fun. We just had so much fun all the time, every day. It was a great life to live.
Well, you mentioned El Camino Community College and a number of the other places that you went to college, and then obviously in the NFL. But for high school, you want to tell us a little bit about your time at El Camino and some of your favorite memories?
Well, El Camino Junior College is a 2-year school. It's one of the best. It's in the Metropolitan Conference, and it was one of the best conferences in the country. It had Santa Monica, it had Cerritos, Long Beach, Bakersfield, El Camino College, Cerritos, and LA Valley College. It had a lot of very good schools that had a lot of that were dense with students. There was a lot of students at all of those schools. LA is a huge, as you know, is a huge melting pot, and there's an awful lot of people here, and so the Metropolitan Conference. The enrollment in the schools were huge, so they had a huge cross-section of talent, football, sports talent. And all of those schools were really good, and the competition was great. And having only played 1 year, in my senior year at the Lawndale High School, I probably my biggest growth spurt in the sport was those 2 years at El Camino College, and that, as I say, that time there was I've never worked as hard as in my life. I never worked professionally as hard as you work, coming out of high school, and getting into college. The double days, the two-a-days, the time involved. It was very concentrated and hard work, and I really responded to it. If I was going to quit, because it was just too difficult, that would have been the time to do it. But I stuck with it, and my friends were there. Primarily, one of the reasons I went to El Camino College was simply because all of my friends were there. I was laying at the beach by myself, And so when I went over to the school to see my friends, the coach got a hold of me and just kind of reminded me. He says, you're only young once, and you better pull your head out of your rear end and get into school. And I already wasted 1 year. So as a matter of fact, they had the Pac-8, which was where SC, UCLA, Stanford, Oregon State, all of those schools, the Pac-12 now, but the Pac-8 then had a eligibility rule that if you didn't go to school your first year out of high school, you lost that year of eligibility with the Pac-8. So after I sat out a year, I went to El Camino for 2 years, and I was recruited by USC and all the Pac-8 schools, but I was 1 year shy of being eligible, so I couldn't go. So I wound up going down to San Diego State, and that wound up actually being the best thing for me.
All right, now you talked about going to San Diego State. You played for one of the most underrated coaches I think there are, Don Coryell. We've had Ed White, who played for Don with the Chargers, Jim Hannafin, who coached with him with the Cardinals. Tell us a little bit about your first meeting with Coach Coryell.
Well, it was a weird one. I was recruited, and you get to go on these trips. I went on a bunch of trips. I went to Florida State, to Oklahoma, and you just you go to all these schools to visit, as a recruiting trip. And so I got on the airplane and flew down to San Diego, and I was told that one of the coaches would meet me there at the school, meet me there at the airport, and drag me over to the school. And so I got there, and there was nobody. Nobody came up to me. I didn't know who to look for, so there was a lot of people coming and going, and the terminal was full, and then the planes would arrive, and they'd leave, and there I was, like about half hour later, and I was standing there all by myself, nobody around me, and then this guy comes up to me, and he just kind of looks at me. It doesn't really say anything to me. He just walks up to me and puts his arm around me and introduces himself as he says, "I'm Don Coryell, the head football coach at San Diego State," and he says, "Yeah, follow me." And so I followed him through the airport out to his station wagon, and we pulled out of the station. We pulled out in the station wagon into traffic and headed over to the freeway. And he mistakenly drove up the off ramp of the freeway. and there was, you can imagine the traffic coming down the other way. I said, I yelled out to him. I said, "What the hell are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, hell, I'm so sorry. I'm just so sorry. I'm just so excited to see you." And so we're standing there. We're just sitting there still while these cars are zooming by. I said, "Well, put this damn thing in reverse and let's get out of here." So he puts it in reverse and stomps on it, and we zoom backwards down the on-ramp onto the street. He whips it around. He steps on it and burns rubber, and he just floors it. And he doesn't say anything for about maybe a couple of miles, and then he looks over to me and he just says, "Let's just keep this between me and you."
Yes, this is your first impression of him.
Yeah. So that's the first day I met him, and he was quite a character, and one of the great all-time coaches. And the coaching staff that I had at San Diego State, I don't know if you're aware of who.
Yeah, that's actually our next question.
It's our next question.
Go ahead and ask me.
Okay. Well, the coaching staff, you got the great Don Coryell. Then you've got John Madden, Joe Gibbs, Ernie Zampese, and Sid Hall. Has to be one of the greatest college coaching staffs ever assembled. So go ahead and tell us what it was like to be around those great coaches.
Well, when I got down there was, John Madden was the defensive coach. Joe Gibbs was the offensive line coach. Rod Dowhauer was the quarterback coach. Ernie Zampese was the secondary coach, and who later on became one of the great offensive coordinators in pro football. And I think he's been retired now for about 10 years, but he was one of the great football minds. And all of these guys, all their philosophies came off of their relationship with Don Coryell. It was off the Don Coryell coaching tree, as it were. And they all had philosophies that took from Don Coryell's philosophy of how he coached, how he handled people, what his philosophy was offensively. Of all of the experiences I've had in football from high school, from that 1 year in high school, 2 years at El Camino, 2 years at San Diego, and 13 years in the National Football League, my 2 years at San Diego State were the most fun because the coach made it the most fun. And what I mean by that is he just had an atmosphere in how he talked to people, how he freed them up, how he told them, listen, you're here, you have a job to do, and let's just have a lot of fun every single day doing it. Let's win a bunch of football games. And then when you watch him coach the team during the games, you get an understanding of just how advanced he was at the time. We played Southern Mississippi. Here comes one of these football stories. But we played Southern Mississippi at home, and we were a 40-point underdog, and they had just gotten beat by Memphis and Alabama the first previous weeks, and they came out here, because they wanted to take their kids to the zoo, So they came out here and told people that, we're here to take our kids to the zoo. Plus, we got you on the schedule because we need to get a win, and so we're going to come out here and we're going to have to run it up a little bit because the people back home are a little upset. We're 0-2, and so they were a 40-point favorite, and so what winds up happening is during the game. One of the things was they punted to us, and the ball landed on our 1 foot line. And so Coryell is running up and down the sideline, clapping his hands, saying, he says, we got him right where we want him. We got 99 yards to work. And so he huddled the team up in the end zone, and he came out with 6 wideouts on his own 1 yard line, and 6 passing plays later, we scored a touchdown. We beat them 68-7, and it was one of the worst drubbings that Southern Mississippi had ever had, and it was one of the biggest upsets. It was actually a 100-point turnaround. We were a 40-point dog. We won by 60, and it was one of the most fascinating, enjoyable times of my life. That still. It still, to this day, has a big impact on me.
All right, now after your senior season, you played in the old college all-star game against the world champion Jets. What was it like to play in that game?
Yeah, I think the game we almost won, and we played the Jets. They won everything in '68. So here we are in August '69, and we're playing in the game. And it's always good. It's always good to compare yourself to professional players. And this was the first time any of us had played against a professional team. So it was challenging. It was a lot of fun, and you got to see exactly the difference between college players and professional players who have played 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 8 and 10 years, and it was a lot of fun, and we almost won. And it was had we been able to keep all of those players, those all-star players, together in one team, hell, we would have won a lot of Super Bowls with those guys. We had That was OJ's year, Joe Green. We had just a lot of great. That was a great class of college players that came out that year, and we almost beat them. It was a lot of fun.
You're a California guy. What was your draft day like when you found out that you'd been drafted by the Giants?
Well, I kind of knew I was going to – I knew that I was coming up. I was the 13th pick, and I was told that I would go pretty early, and there was like 4 teams that were looking for linemen. And I was told by the Raiders that they were going to draft me, but they were down the list, and they told me actually John Madden told me, he just said, John Madden was the guy that recruited me to San Diego State, and then the first year after spring practice, he got a linebacker's job with the Raiders, and then the following year, 2 years later, he was head coach, and then he told me that they were going to draft me, but I wouldn't be around long enough to be where the Raiders were going to pick. So I kind of knew that I was going to go a little earlier than that. I think they picked 23rd or 24th or something, and I got picked 13th. I pretty much knew it was either the Bears, the Lions, or the Giants. So I kind of knew it was going to be. I was going to probably wind up going back east, but that was okay with me. I enjoyed. I enjoyed the trip. It was a lot of fun, but it didn't take long to realize that they weren't going anywhere. So I kind of played my option out in '71, and then they wound up trading me draft day. They traded me to the Patriots, and then 4 months later, in May of that year, '72, they couldn't sign me. I wouldn't sign back there, and so they traded me to the Rams.
All right, you got to L.A. The Rams were one of the best teams in the league at the time. Their coach was Chuck Knox. You want to talk about your relationship with Chuck a little bit?
Well, I got there in '72. They weren't very good. They had Tommy Prothro there, and he was confused about what to do. But the interesting thing in '72 was Carroll Rosenblum traded the Colts for the Rams. And so that was the big news here, is that the Rams, Dan Reeves' estate, was finally going to sell the team. And there was a lot of suitors. But the surprise was that, all right at the beginning of training camp of '72, they announced that the Rams were going to be bought by Robert Irsay, and then Irsay was going to trade the Rams straight across for the Colts. And that is, in fact, what happened. And that year, the Rams went 6-7-1. We weren't that good. And they fired Prothro. And in the '73 season, when they brought Chuck in, and that's when everything turned around.
You want to talk a little bit about your first touchdown of your NFL career in 1975 against the Eagles?
Actually, that was a Monday. That was a Monday night game, and Roman Gabriel was the quarterback, and Roman threw the ball right to me, and it stuck kind of right in my face mask, actually, and so I just, it was just thrown right to me. I just went down I think 25, 30 yards or something. Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. I gave Roman a lot of hard time for that one.
That's why we brought it up.
Yeah, it was really.
Now, was there any touchdown dance involved with it after you scored?
No, I actually got pushed underneath the stands, and I told some guy, I said, well, why didn't you, I said, well, I planned on, lighting my hair on fire, but I didn't have any lighter fluid,
Yeah, I saw a quote where you said in one of the papers there that's what you were going to do if you scored another touchdown.
Yeah, you got to be prepared. But the lighter fluid thing was a big hazard there. So
Yeah.
But it
known to do that.
It turned out to be a real good night for everybody. You want to win those Monday night games, especially against Roman. But we had a lot of laughs after the game about that one.
Now, you played on some great defensive linemen in LA, like Merlin Olsen and Jack Youngblood. Want to talk a little bit about those guys?
Well, Merlin was one of the four original fearsome foursome, which was Deacon Jones, Merlin, Rosie Greer, and then when Rosie tore his Achilles tendon in '69, he was pretty much done. And then went out and got Roger Brown from Detroit, and then the right end was Lamar Lundy. So that was the original fearsome foursome, and then a couple of years later, they all scattered. Some guys got traded, some guys retired. Merlin was the only one left, and so the Rams went out and drafted Jack. They traded for me and drafted Larry Brooks, and that formulated the new group of guys. And that we were actually on the squad on the same team together in '72, but Prothro never put it together. It's one of the shortcomings of Tommy Prothro in '72 is that he had the talent on the team, but never put it together and never used it. So there was some players that he had on the kickoff teams and the kick return teams who should have been starting, and he had a nose for talent, but he didn't quite put it together. He never had a system. Tommy never had a system that made use of all the talent that he had on the team. So when Chuck came in '73, he had a good portion of the nucleus of the teams that played for him was already in place.
All right. Now, you talked about that. He had him played 1973. I think you guys were 12-2, had a great team. 75, lost the championship game at Minnesota. Those were great teams. What do you think was the thing that kept you guys from getting over the top or over the hump?
Well, you got to play well in those games, and there was when we played well defensively, we didn't play well offensively. And there was one year we got blown out at home. We had Dallas at home. We figured, well, hell, we got them at home now. I think now we've got an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl, and we got blown out here at home. And why those things happen, who the hell knows? But I was there for 10 years, and my favorite team was the '74 team. I thought we had the best group of guys and the best talent, and we were just crushing people defensively, and we did so for about 10 years, and it was a very good defensive unit for a long period of time. The main problem was, you probably talked to Roman about this, but the main problem always was that during those years, during the 70s, after Roman Gabriel was traded in '72 to the Eagles for Charlie Young and Harold Jackson, they never went out and got themselves a quarterback. They never committed to getting a quarterback, providing the team with leadership from the quarterback position. They went through, and you got a list there of all the guys that they went through for Chuck Knox's 5 years. I mean, and that caused a huge rift between ownership and Chuck. And it was primarily the root of why Chuck was not re-signed after the '77 season. And,
they went through John Hadel, James Harris, I think was the quarterback '74 championship game. Then you had Jaworski, Hayden. I mean, they had that problem, and then actually Vince Ferragamo, who may not be as good as a couple of those guys, took you to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, the team was loaded with talent, but I think it's fair to say that Chuck was extremely conservative. His philosophy, and we're talking about Coryell's philosophy, Chuck's philosophy was that he would beat you to death with defense and win the game, 17-7, and that was the philosophy. You don't make any mistakes. You play very conservatively offensively, grind the ball out, eat up the clock, and let your defense just beat people to death. Well, that only goes so far. That only works, so often during the regular season. But when you get into the playoff for contention, you're playing very good teams, and that doesn't usually pull you through. And it was always a problem. We always had offensive problems in playoff games. And I always thought, at the time anyway, that if they had just let James Harris, let him just work the offense, open it up a little bit, let him run the offense and provide leadership, from the quarterback position. But they never did, then they had Jaworski, and then they had Pat Hayden, and they wanted Pat Hayden because he was an SC boy, and he's a Rhodes Scholar. I don't know what the hell that means. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to do for your completion rate. But Pat was barely 6 foot tall and 170 pounds. And I remember one day, and this was probably the beginning of the end for Pat, but I remember playing the Bears at the Coliseum, and Wally Chambers, a big tackle for the Bears, hit him blindside and hit him, and they ran over him and pushed him. It was like a Roadrunner cartoon. They pushed him right down into the turf. They had to peel him out of that hole. He laid in that hole for like about 5 minutes, and that was pretty much it. It pretty much rattled him, and so there was another quarterback that they had to replace and go out and get, and it was, and then they decided to trade. Probably the best quarterback we had around was Ron Jaworski. But see, that was probably because, thinking back on it, it was because Chuck did not want the quarterback running the show. He wanted to call the plays and control the game from the quarterback position. And it was the Achilles heel, I think when he got to Buffalo, I think he learned a little bit, and certainly when he got to Seattle, Chuck learned a little bit to lighten up. But the overview is that those Ram teams, as good as they were, suffered offensively in big games.
Well, the NFL changed the rules to favor offensive linemen more in 1977. How did that change your approach to the game as a defensive end?
Well, look. I mean, it's they legalized holding in 75 actually, and they started doing then what they just said we're not making any apologies for now. And that is, we're going to engineer the game into a high-scoring game. We want it to be an offensive league. And now they've almost legislated running the ball out. They've given such a leeway to quarterbacks and to receivers. it used to be when a receiver was drafted, it took him a while to understand the league and understand coverages and understand how to get away from the Willie Browns of life. The guys will just clamp onto you, and just because you were a great college receiver did not necessarily mean that was going to translate professionally. And so what they did ostensibly is they penalized defensive backs, and so you can't cover them as close as you could before. And so therefore, all of the young receivers coming into pro football now had a huge improvement curve. And so they now, a guy coming out of college could come out and catch 100 balls his rookie year. And so that's not the way it used to be. And so now quarterbacks throw for 5,000 yards a year, 30 touchdowns. Everybody's now moving the ball through the air, and you don't really see running backs drafted with a premier philosophy. You don't see them drafted very high anymore because you can get good backs in the second round. And so all of what's being drafted is quarterbacks, linemen, and receivers, and that's the way that'll be, in this draft too. So it's you've got a league now that's engineered everything out, and they hold now. I mean, they just all but tackle you now. And it's not. I don't think it's a good league. I think that's. And I gave it the nickname government football because of the rules and regulations that they've ascribed to the game today. And it's very frustrating. And it was very frustrating. You could see it coming. By the time I was out in '81, you could see where they wanted to go, and here they are. In mid-form with a league that is so overly regulated, and they've got more penalties on every play. They can't catch up. They can't officiate the games correctly. They've got problems, and their philosophy, as I said, is governmental in scope. Is that if they have a problem, they add another rule. And what they should be doing is deregulating it and making sure that there's safety involved. And the biggest gripe I have is the tackling fundamentals and techniques have been stripped out of the game. It's no longer being taught in college because of Title IX. No money, no time. They just say, look, you guys know what to do. Get the ball carrier on the ground. The critical aspect of football is engaging the ball carrier, be it a running back or a receiver, and getting them on the ground. And it's that defines the sport. Otherwise, if you take tackling out of the sport, which you have as an intramural sport, who gives a hell about that? And so you've got people now poor tackling fundamentals, poor skills. You've got head-to-head contact now. They don't know how to get rid of it. They don't know how to stop it because nobody was smart enough, ethical enough to say we've got to bring forth, as this game evolves and coaches and players, commissioners, turn over, we've got to bring in people here who will fundamentally teach these players how to engage the ball carrier and bring them to the ground. And you got to do it safely, and they're not doing that. The sport is very irresponsible today, and it's overregulated.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL is irresponsible on the way it takes care of older players. on the way it deals with concussions? I mean, you want to speak a little bit about the way the NFL deals or doesn't deal with their retired players?
Well, there is no relationship with ex-players that is mandated by the National Football League, the executive committee. What they do is they assign an ex-player to speak for and represent ex-players in the collective bargaining process. You know, they have the NFL Players Association, and then they have the ex-NFL players represented by somebody who works for the league. Instead of having somebody represented from the ex-players to the National Football League and to the NFL Players Association. The existing players, the NFL, and there should be a separate body of ex-NFL players. All of them should have a seat at the bargaining table. So the ex-players can negotiate what the TV package is and get part and parcel of their share. So their pensions and their retirement benefits go up just like the players, present-day players' pensions go up. All these players have been told, we'll negotiate for you, and you'll be lucky to get what we give you. I mean, it's an absolute scam crime. This is a labor disaster, and nobody cares about it. You've got a guy like Gene Upshaw, and I don't like to talk about dead people in a negative way, but I will for Gene, because Gene has come out and while he was the executive leader of the Players Association, he came out and said that we don't care about ex-players and they're not getting any money. Now, if you can imagine an ex-player, if you can imagine the National Football League allowing their partner in the league, the players, to take such a position, and it's criminal of what's going on. And the league is, I don't have a lot good to say about the National Football League. I played there. I see it. I know what they're doing. I know how they think about players. I saw and see what they do, and it's an absolute disaster what they're doing. Certainly, this concussion thing it's disastrous in its scope, but it's never going to turn around unless you get somebody, DeMaurice Smith. I don't know, if you know anything about him. I don't know that much, but he just gives lip service. The philosophy is this: the league tells DeMaurice Smith, "Look, we'll give you a lot of money if you promise not to strike. What we can't afford to have happen is for the players to strike and have a work stoppage. That will destroy our TV package and our advertising. So we can't allow that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make it so there's enough money for the players to cut up, and just let us do what we want to do. And if you don't like AstroTurf, that's too bad. We're gonna put AstroTurf in, and if you don't like it, we'll give you some more money so you'll shut up. And you don't have to give any money to ex-players. They're all washed up. We hope they die off anyway. We're not really worried about ex-players and anything that they have to say or what their complaints are. There's no value to us except for NFL films. We want to exploit their likenesses even after they're dead, gone, and out of the league. We're still going to exploit that, and it's very frustrating. I talked to a lot of people, and there's just a very frustration, a sadness that's in ex-players, people say, "Oh, gee, you played pro football. Gee, you must really feel great." Well, look, I did it. I played it, and I got paid for it, and I negotiated my contracts, and now I'm done. But you know something? There's an injustice that still remains to this very day, and it's getting worse as time goes by.
We've heard
most definitely. We've talked to a ton of players that have had stories exactly like that. I don't know. You remember Eddie Metter, great defensive back for the Rams in the 60s and in the early 70s. And, I mean, just talking to him when he tells me what his pension is and the fact that this is a billion-dollar industry now just by the TV contract alone, it's an absolute joke. They don't take care of the people that got them those billions of dollars.
Yeah, here's the funny thing. There was mention when Gene Upshaw was alive. He made the comment. Somebody. There was a conversation in New York at league headquarters about the collective bargaining agreement. They were meeting to bargain, and the ex-players were brought up. And Gene Upshaw said, "We don't represent them. They're useless to us. And we don't even consider them. As a matter of fact, they're not even represented here." And I'm thinking, as everybody is, they're just saying, well, where's our representation to the league? How do you, how is it that we have a pension? We put union dues in as players, and we're due a pension. The National Football League is signatory with the union. You have a collective bargaining agreement. It's court mandated, and at the same time, we have that in place. We don't have any representation whatsoever. Matter of fact, we have a pompous ass who now comes out and tells people that we don't care about ex-players. We want the money, and we're going to get the money. So there's a couple of players during that period of time that was, all in support of Gene Upshaw. They're the ones that went to the press and said, unfortunately, well, guess what? As time has gone by, those players who are now ex-players have big-time problems. They've got money problems. They've got health issues. They want to know, what about their rights and their benefits. And who do they come to? They come to the ex-players. They come to the attorneys that represent groups of players who are filing class action lawsuits. I was the named plaintiff here against a lawsuit against the National Football League, Dreyer versus NFL, and to sue to get compensation for the misappropriation and the use of our likenesses through NFL films without our permission. And we lost it in court. It took 5 years to do it. I went to court, and I got to see the real workings of this league and its effect on the court system, the Eighth Circuit Court, the Minneapolis Court, Judge Magnuson and Magistrate Boylan. Those two guys who sit there and tell the players to wait outside, and we'll get back to you, let you know what we're going to do about your future. And they sit there and they're on the phone. They have meetings down the hall with the attorneys for the league, and these attorneys who are supposed to represent us, a group of attorneys, Bucky Zimmerman out of Minneapolis, who was supposed to represent us. They just tell us to shut up, and they're going to go down there and cut a deal. This class action lawsuit attorneys. You know how they work. They get a bunch of people together. Put your name down here, Fred, and we'll get 6 plaintiffs, and we'll file complaints to the league in your favor, and we'll get you just compensation for everybody. And of course, all they do is use you and use your name to get the court filed and to get the attention of the league. So the league will say, okay, look, what do you guys want? And the attorneys will say, well, we want $10 million. Well, you're not going to get $10 million. Look, here's $5 million. Why don't you just go away? Well, that $5 million goes to the attorneys. Doesn't go to anybody else. And it's such a filthy scam. I saw too many things that just got me so negative and so angry that nothing is being done. All of these owners, all of these players today, they're so the selfishness and the criminality. And it is criminal. The league knows what they're doing, and these workmen's compensation, attorneys and all these other people here, they understand the problems, and nobody does anything about it. But and I don't know within my lifetime if anything's ever going to happen. You try and hope that maybe somewhere on the next collective bargaining agreement that somebody will step forward and really be heard, so we can have a seat at a representative, a lawyer, players from the ex-players group can have a seat at the bargaining table, and that's what has to happen. But so far, we've been kept out of it by the Players Association.
Well, like Mike said, we've talked to a number of ex-players, and a lot of the stories are very similar. It's criminal when you think about how little the pensions are, but really, to me, the worst issue is all the players that have so many health problems and they can't get a lot of their issues taken care of. You got players like Mike Ditka and Jerry Kramer that are trying to get insurance for some of these guys, and it's just criminal that the league can't help their former players.
Well, I always hear, and you always hear that the word greed. You always really kind of like wonder what it is and how does it apply. This is a classic example of a failure with ownership and a failure with the commissioner. I think that as time has passed, you realize that you see the truth that ownership hates players. It's a necessary evil. They have to cut off. They have to give 53% of the TV package to the players. And the players, in return for that, are bought and sold. DeMaurice Smith, Gene Upshaw does a deal with the ownership. There's 5 or 6 owners that run the whole show, and they get together and they just tell the head of the Players Association, Gene Upshaw, or whoever the hell, DeMaurice Smith now, and some other top-ranked players on the team in the league, that look, we're going to give you guys a lot of money, but you got to promise you cannot sue us. You can't fight for your rights. We're going to buy you out of your rights. And as far as the ex-players are concerned, we don't care about them. Here's what we're going to do. We'll let you handle that. See, this is the big trade-off. Owners tell the Players Association the ex-players are your responsibility. Now, if you don't want to take care of them, that's up to you. But we're making the money available for you, so don't tell us we're not doing we're conscious free now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And in fact, it should be ownership who stands up, leadership, ownership, stands up, 5, 6 guys, Jerry Jones, all the guys that you know who they are, Jerry Richardson's, all these guys who have clout in the league, that stand up and just say, we've got to do something for the ex-players. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to have them organize, get somebody representative in the next collective bargaining agreement. We're going to take a look at their benefits. We're going to take a look at what Mike Ditka and all these prominent Hall of Fame players are saying, and listen to them and try and help them, and get the Players Association out of it, and have the ownership, the commissioner, go directly to the ex-players. And until that happens, nothing will happen.
Yeah, we definitely agree, and we've heard so many stories about that. Another thing, so you ended your career in 1981, and you went into acting. How did that come about? And just tell us a little bit about your acting career.
Well, look, you don't have to play that sport. Certainly under the conditions that existed in the 60s, in the 70s, and the 80s, the decades that I played, and even now certainly. But you don't have to know that you're going to go play in Philadelphia on a crappy cement floor with a carpet glued to the top of it.
Yeah, and the carpet's about a quarter of an inch deep, also at most.
Yeah, and you don't have to play in this league long enough to realize that you're being insulted every single day, and they're going to say, well, we're going to give you more per diem for the road trip. We're going to give you $27 instead of $19. And then you can go out and play on this turf, and see those days there were strikes. I was part of a couple of the strikes, and they weren't. I was there in a meeting when they told, when we raised our hands and said, this was in the 70s. This is when what's his name, Marvin Miller, just put that deal together for Major League Baseball in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And that's when we were striking. We said, we want Marvin Miller. And that was shot down. Marvin Miller came out and said, I'll get pro football players a better pension than baseball. And we said, we want that guy. And there was a huge argument about that. And so all of this stuff, when you go through this and realize you're being railroaded, it doesn't take you long to realize, you've got to look for something else to do. And I was one of those guys that took a look around. I'm one of the guys that sat up against the chain link fence at training camp, and before practice they blew the horn, and would just say, I got to get out of here. And I worked diligently to follow my interests. I had no idea if I could make a living as an actor, but I knew I was interested in it, so I thought I would put time into finding out about myself through that interest. I went to school all through the 70s. I came back from the Giants. I came back here in 72. I started following my interests in the off season, during my off days. I drove up to Hollywood. I met people, and I found out who the good acting coaches were. I tried to figure out as much as I could while I was still playing. And by the time 81 rolled around, I was ready in the mid-70s. I was ready. I played 13 years. After about 6 years, I said, I'm ready, brother. I played half my career wanting out. And it's not a negative. It's just an awareness. It's just the way it is. You recognize your own mortality to the point where you now are clear to make decisions for yourself that don't threaten you. The whole thing. People say, "Well, gee, you got to play as long as you can." Well, I mean, for the right reasons, you play. I mean, if you need the money, okay, fine, you're playing for the money. But I mean, you have to be free in your own skin to be able to say, I can see that I shouldn't be playing this anymore. I should be over there doing that. And now, how do I bridge that? How do I get over there? So that's what I had to figure out the remaining years that I was playing, and so I wanted to study acting. I wanted to study everything about it. And did I think I could supplement my salary from football? I realistically said probably not. So how am I going to handle that? So that's what I went back and forth on for a long time, and then the Rams who by the time when Carol Rosenblum died in '79 when he drowned, what was left the last couple of years there were people that didn't like me, and I didn't like them, and it got to the point where I just tell them, I said, look, I have a contract, I'll play it out, but don't talk to me. I don't like you, and I don't like you especially, and so I'm going to be out of here. And of course, when they could, they waited to the very last minute to cut me, so I couldn't go somewhere else. But when they did cut me in '81, August of '81, the last cut before the season started in '81, the 49ers picked me up, and Bill Walsh. I talked to Bill Walsh, and he says, "Come on up here." He says, we'll sign you. You can come up here. That was the Super Bowl year. That's when they beat Cincinnati and Detroit. That was that year. And but I said, something, I'm going to get on with it. I'm done. I don't want to protract this anymore. And I said, frankly, I and it's not right to throw a blanket over it, but I don't like football people. I think football people are full of themselves and very narrow. Basically, are there good people? You're damn right there are. I made a lot of great friends, but I said, it's time for me to leave, and grow up in a sense. And so, and I started putting all of my energy and time. When I left, the day they cut me, I got in my car, threw all my stuff in my truck, and I threw it in the back, and I just got on that freeway and headed right up to my attorney's office in Westwood. And I said, I'm ready to go now, man. I'm done. I'm turning the page, and this is what I'm doing now. And I turned the page, I was in his office, and I said, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm not doing. This is who I'm talking to, and this is who I'm not talking to, and this is my life now. And I said, we'll find out what happens. And
well, and it definitely worked out all right for you. Yeah. We're almost out of time right now, but I know we are planning on doing a show in probably about a month. We got a few prominent neurosurgeons and a couple other former players that are going to come on and talk about the concussion issue in the NFL. So if you'd be interested in coming on there, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, just give me a call. We'll figure something out.
All right. Hey, thanks for coming on the show again, Matt. You got any final words for Fred?
Absolutely. I grew up a big Hunter fan. I was born in the mid-'70s, and so that was my first exposure to you. I was a big Hunter fan, and then I remember getting some baseball cards from when I was a little kid, and I like, wow, I didn't know Hunter played football, and I got to learn about you, and it was really an honor to talk to you and learn about your career and all about you.
Well, Matt, you're very kind, and I sure appreciate it. And life's funny, when suddenly, you come face to face or person to person with people from your past, and that's what makes life a lot of fun. I enjoy being a part of it.
Well, hey, it was great having you on, Fred. I was always a Bengals fan, so I had to have a team to cheer for in the playoffs, and I always loved you, Jack Youngblood. I mean, it was a great football team, and, I mean, really, we've interviewed a lot of guys that played on that Rams team, and the thing that really is good is when you watch somebody when you're younger. And, I mean, I didn't idolize them because my dad taught me you don't idolize somebody for being able to catch or throw a ball. But when you find out that the guys that you were cheering for at least are good people, it makes it even that much better.
Yeah, I agree. I that's what I've found, in my travels. I met a lot of interesting people. I'll just close with this one. I met Ronald Reagan after he left office, and I was doing an appearance for Maureen Reagan, who was running for office out here. And she said, well, my dad's going to come by, I think. And I said, oh, yeah, that'd be interesting. So sure enough, the car drove up, and he's sitting in the front seat, sitting shotgun. And he gets out, and Maureen goes over and says, Dad, I want you to meet somebody. He said, Dad, this is Fred Dry. He goes, I know who he is. And he went right off, and we started talking about football. We started talking about California and L.A., and I was there about maybe 15 minutes with him, just one-on-one with the ex-president. It was like talking to you guys.
Okay, so you're saying that me or Matt could someday be president, possibly.
You're very presidential, both of you.
Well, thanks again, Fred. Anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, just give me a call when you get those guys together, and we'll figure it out.
All right. Thanks a lot, Fred.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All
right, guys, remember to check us out on gruelingtruth.net. We can be heard on Google Play, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, a bunch of other stuff. If I sit here and name them all off, it'll take another 10 minutes, and nobody wants to listen to that. But any last words?
Wow. I mean, this was a unique one because, I just knew him primarily as an actor. It was my favorite show from probably ages 7 to 12. And when I found out he was a football player, I got to learn a little bit about it. Found out he was on, the Rams. I knew a little bit about the Rams, like you. I like Jack Youngblood. I like Jackie Slater, and so it was pretty cool that a guy that you liked to watch on TV also played football for one of the better teams of the '70s. But to talk to him, to hear his stories, it's a shame, like we talked about, that the NFL is done to their ex-players, but hopefully something changes. But I definitely understand where he's coming from. But getting back to what I was saying, just to talk to him, it's really neat to talk to a guy who's done a lot in his career, also in the NFL.
All right. I want to remind everybody real quick, our first ever draft show will be Thursday night from 8 to 11 with myself, Matt Andruscavage, former Denver Bronco Mark Cooper. We'll have a bunch of other special guests. We'll be on for 3 hours to go through the drafts, so make sure you check that out. Also, Wednesday morning, our Grueling Truth comprehensive draft guide will be out, which lists the top players at each position, sleeper picks, and overall top 50 players, so make sure you check that out. Also, check out our sponsor, GridRMO, at www.gridrmo.com, and make sure you check out the GridRMO Super Bowl Trivia app. And Wednesday night, me and Matt will be on with 2 more lucky contestants to play the GridRMO Super Bowl Trivia contest, so make sure you check that out. Matt actually somehow won. It was kind of like the 1980 Olympic hockey all over again. I guess I'm the Russians, he's the Americans. And he got lucky and won, but I will guarantee you this. It will not happen again. So
you're going to make sure that doesn't happen again, huh?
Yes. So we're going to get out of here. Make sure you check us out the rest of this week. Check out our older shows, especially over the last week. We've had Rich Tombstone Jackson, Roman Gabriel, Steve Wallace, now Fred Dreyer. So make sure you check it out. Share it everywhere. Go like our Facebook group page. Follow us on Twitter at Grueling Truth. So for Fred Dreyer, Matt Andruscavage, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.